Wake up, James. We're on, baby.
Man, we made it.
We made it.
Holy cow.
Hey, welcome. It's a struggle on our end tonight, and we're a day and 1 hour and 7 minutes late. The day was on purpose. The hour and 7 minutes was not.
Man, it's been a struggle. So just to bring you guys in the loop here, we're having some problems on the normal Tampa Fishing Outfitters live fishing report page, but we're broadcasting through just the Tampa Fishing Outfitters page.
Yeah, you'll have to explain all that.
Yeah, it's a lot of technical difficulties with tokens and RAM
Blaming Jason.
and hard drives.
I'm still blaming Jason from last week. He hit a button or something he shouldn't have.
But let's we'll kind of chit-chat for a minute, give everybody a chance to find the broadcast.
Yes.
Any of you guys out there that are already tuned in, if you wouldn't mind sharing it maybe to your pages.
Please
help us get our normal audience in here, because
share it.
What we've got is some good info. We're going to be talking about bay fishing and
we got it, man.
This heat.
The heat.
And half my bait dying.
His bait was dying.
Kind of like our feed.
Our feed was dead.
Feed was dead. But we're here now. We got Ty Colby and Ty, dude.
Hey,
share it. Share it.
Share it,
yeah,
Ty.
Yeah.
Help us get some more
people.
people.
Share it, baby.
I know Travis is going to share to our normal page. So.
And Travis and James dissected this problem, worked on it like two surgeons, and got her done. I just sat here in the waiting room cheering you on.
Honestly, you kept your composure though.
I did.
And I think
composed.
if you would have gone off the deep end, this whole thing would have been crippled.
I don't go off the deep end.
Kibosh.
I don't do that.
But anyway, so yeah, we're here. We got a little issue. I got to figure out something. There's something going on with our software and our TFO, our normal Tampa Fishing Outfitters fishing report page. So we backstepped, and we are running the show tonight on the actual Tampa Fishing Outfitters page. So if you're catching our show and you're a normal, watcher or listener or whatever, and you haven't liked the Tampa Fishing Outfitters page, go ahead and click on the link up in the corner there and like this page, because this is the actual store page. So
yes.
A lot of good stuff they're going to be putting up on here. I know I saw recently the Christmas in July deal. So you'll want to follow this page that we're coming live tonight on to catch all those deals, because they'll be putting up the flyers. So check that out. But let's talk a little fishing, boys, while people try to find us through the interweb.
Worldwide.
Can we share this to the normal page?
You
Are we able to?
Yeah, if you want to rock and roll and share.
I don't know how to do all that.
Well, I don't either. I got to get.
You want me to do it?
I also can't log into the Tampa Fishing live page.
We don't want you to do it, Rick.
Crash.
Oh man,
the redfish bite has been on fire.
Yeah.
Mangrove snapper are kind of red.
They're red fish.
All right, yeah.
Redfish.
No, it has been good.
Have started to show up a little bit. Starting to see some redfish.
Oh boy, getting warm. as we were talking, here a few months ago, we were talking about redfish and some of the issues in our fishery related to redfish. And I had a customer that got on the boat, and he watches the show, and he said something about redfish, and I said, "Yeah, we're going after snapper, the other redfish,
no doubt."
But speaking of which, we're going to talk a little bit about bay fishing. We're going to jump right in, and if you guys have got any questions about fishing our area this time of the year, feel free to chime in, and we'll scroll down through here and do our best to get them answered for you. But for me, guys, we talked about it 2 or 3 weeks ago. I've made the transition into bay fishing. I'm fishing the deeper parts of the bay. I'm fishing for, on the bottom, we're fishing for snapper, grouper, some sharks mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
And then, mid column to the surface, we're looking for Spanish mackerel, cobia, and then the tarpon are somewhere in the middle or on, around. So it's been really good. The bite's been good. The weather's been nice, with the exception of the afternoon, thunderheads, which is normal.
That's normal. Yeah.
So fishing has been good. Tarpon fishing has fired off for me in the last few weeks. We're starting to get some good tarpon bites, and the mangrove snapper fishing's been good.
Yeah.
So the other thing, I don't know about you guys, but I had 2 now grouper get eaten by bull sharks inside the bay.
Yeah.
Like keeper grouper. So that's something to be on the lookout for. We talk about warm weather, and that is one of the side effects of having warmer water temperatures in the bay is these sharks. And they'll move in, out of the Gulf, and these big bull sharks and hammerheads. And we caught a giant nurse shark here a few weeks ago. You and I talked about it, and it was the biggest nurse shark that I've ever caught or seen inside Tampa Bay. I mean, this thing was a giant. But point being, you never really know what you're going to catch when you bait fish.
Sure.
Perfect example, we were fishing a locally known area, one of the reefs, and we hooked a big fish. And I said, man, I don't think that's a tarpon or a shark. I said, I'm not sure what that is. And little be known, it never jumped till we got it up to the boat, and it was a tarpon.
Mm-hmm.
We were bottom fishing.
Yeah.
So we've caught stingrays, we've caught sharks. I mean, you name it. But that's part of I like fishing the bay. When you start fishing the bushes in the springtime, or you're fishing in the flats, you can count it on your finger.
Pretty much
you know what's going to happen.
2 or 3 or 4.
When you start doing that bay fishing thing, you just really don't know. I mean, there's some areas out there right now that there's snook in 25, 30 feet of water.
Yeah.
And
there are.
Yes. And you never know what's going to be out there. So I enjoy fishing, doing the bay trips this time of year. So what have you guys been up to?
I've been doing the deep water, doing mackerel, snapper, a little bit of snook fishing, but not a whole lot of trout fishing. Trout for me have just shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Typical. Water starts getting real hot.
When I have gone for trout, we've been able to scratch
Ty.
a few out, but no decent fish. So just kind of staying in that 12-plus feet of water and making it rain.
Well.
How about you, Bubba?
But I did.
I heard you did a little nearshore
I'm like
action.
the nomad lately, putting hundreds of miles on my trailer
Ghost Captain.
every week.
Have you caught bait on the flats yet?
Yeah, up north, and then at the bridge. Man,
Did my first bait on the flats July 1st.
Nice. Mine was the week before, Upper Bay.
Yeah. No,
But
I'm sorry. It was the last day of June.
Do you prefer to catch bait on the flats?
He does.
Yeah.
100,000%.
Because I hate it.
100,000%.
I do. If it's
easy.
well, I don't like dealing with the micro baits on.
I don't like dealing with the grass.
Pinfish, grass, and everything else.
Oh.
You can set up on a sand hole and chum them to the sand, and the grass is not that big a deal typically.
I like that there are fewer surprises
and fewer
people for sure. But you're not when bait's on the flats, you're pretty much going to get it, and you pretty much know what time you're going to be done. Generally,
you're not going to lose a net.
You're not going to lose a net.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
You've lost a net on the flat?
I've never lost a net, but I have ripped a net on a flat.
Oh, yeah.
I was catching bait out
on an
by
oyster bar.
No, on an oyster bar on a shipwreck. I was catching bait over in St. Pete one time, and we were catching bait on a flat. over there close to the bridge, and I had threw the net several times in a similar area, and one time I got hung, and I still don't really know what it was, but it was a piece of metal. Somebody had thrown something off their boat, and I got hung. But you know, so it's possible.
It can.
An abandoned crab trap or something.
Yeah, you know, you never know. But definitely less likely.
Yeah,
definitely less likely.
Yeah, I think in the past
power
week.
pole down, Joe. Yes, sir, baby.
Nice.
Always.
I fished in the past week. I've touched the northernmost point of the bay, and I've also been out on some Bradenton, nearshore stuff, Anna Maria nearshore stuff, which is cool. I really enjoy that type of fishing. I took some people out Tuesday, and we did that. And the Goliath population is
healthy.
And they're eating well.
Well, one thing that I now you and I were talking before the show about nearshore fishing and snapper fishing and bringing reef fish up from the bottom, and the Goliath groupers sort of taking advantage of that. And I had a very similar situation happen last year. I don't do a whole lot of, I'd say, nearshore to offshore fishing at all, next to none on charters, but I do enjoy going out there and fishing when I can. And last year we did several offshore trips because we had some really nice weather, and same thing, July, full moon, right around there.
Yeah.
We just kept getting stung by Goliath. I mean, like every place we went to, man. And I later found out that that's when they spawn.
Yeah.
This is their spawning time. And so I often wonder if it's worse, June, July, that whole Goliath, interaction between you trying to catch fish. I don't fish out there enough to know. I know inside the bay, it's just hit or miss.
Yeah.
You're going to find areas that you fish that have got a few of them on them, and they just live there, and you got to deal with them. But I don't know when you get offshore if they congregate or, to do their spawn and then sort of split up or how it works. But I do know that it was really bad in July.
It is.
And
I'm used to it.
Times I've been out and not that time of year, it's not near as bad, So I don't know if that spawn has them fired up, you know what I mean? So just if anybody's an offshore guy and can throw in on that, I would just like to know personally if you think that the Goliath groupers are worse, say the summer months than they are any other time of the year.
So I've fished the Bradenton, Anna Maria near shore scene a lot growing up, and it's always been a problem over the course of the summer. I don't fish it as frequently, or I've never fished it as frequently in the winter, just because the numbers of fish aren't really there. So I don't have anything to compare it to, but if I compare it to like start of the season, end of the season, it's like right there in those hot months. It's really July and August,
right,
when the bite is the best. Of course,
it kind of goes hand in hand.
Kind of goes hand in hand. But I've seen, there's some tricks out there to get them, to get the snapper off the bottom without them being sacrificed.
Obviously tackle is going to be one.
Tackle's number one.
Number one, a good high-speed reel, especially if you're in shallower water.
Right.
You're going to want to get that fish up as quickly as you can.
Yeah. The problem we run into is in order to get the eat, you're dropping down to 15, 20-pound fluorocarbon or whatever leader. So you're at the mercy of that leader in the structure that you're on. Whereas, you'd think, just jump up to 30 or 40. Then you're likely not going to get a bite. So it's tough. I've seen there's a captain down there who told me he'll come tight on the fish and open the bail.
And let the fish
Give
run
it 30 seconds, get him off the structure because he's not feeling the pressure, and then do it. I haven't tried it myself, but he swears by it. So, I got another trip. I got a couple more I'm doing this weekend, so we'll see.
Is that before or after they rock
He said he hits it. Yeah, he said he hits it, gets it off, and then let it go. So, I don't know.
I've done that once they rock you up. And
yeah, you let them go.
I never just...
Well, what I'm finding, and this is just yesterday, or Tuesday, sorry, not the 4th, Tuesday, the 3rd, is these fish are eating 10 feet below the boat, not down on the bottom. They're coming all the way up. We're seeing it happen. I mean, you're racing to flip this guy in the boat as fast as you can.
We're seeing it in 18 feet in the bay in some areas.
18, yeah, exactly. So they come up.
You don't have a whole lot of room to work with, When you're offshore, let's just say 50-plus feet, you've got a range there where unless they're just fired up. Now, we had them coming up eating permit, like
permit, off
the bottom.
Oh,
they love permit. But, you got a permit. We were in like 90 feet of water, and you get a permit, and you start seeing color, and all of a sudden he comes up and eats it from 90 feet of water. So they'll go as high as they want to go. But in shallower water, it definitely makes it more tough because a couple swipes of the tail and that dude is on you.
Yeah.
You know, so it's definitely an issue, and I'm sure there's tactics to get around it. But
I've also heard catch one, you know, so if you have the tackle to do it, like if you bring one up, that they kind of slow down. You know, not proven. I've never proven it, but these are just the things I've heard. You know,
I can tell you that.
I know if you bring them up and vent them,
and
send them back vented, a lot of time that one won't eat again.
Really?
Yeah.
What I'm curious to know is it a couple, or is there just a mother load?
I can tell you, man, from fishing certain areas like locally known Goliath grouper hangouts. You know, let's say the Skyway Bridge. I'm gonna use the Skyway Bridge, and I'm gonna use Boca Grande.
You don't want to vent them around the Skyway.
Well, no, I'm not talking about
vent them offshore.
I'm just talking about
no
in general to Goliath groupers and sort of his question. A lot of guys have told me, because I've done quite a few Goliath trips over the years, and a well-known captain down in Boca Grande was kind of schooling me a little bit when I was fishing down there, and he was talking about pyramid feeding, about how a lot of times a smaller one will eat.
They're not understanding me.
Huh?
I guess not.
What did we miss? Did we miss it?
The venting.
Yeah, you vent him.
You vent him.
You vent him and send him back.
If you vent him
like
with
a full vent.
A full vent.
Okay.
Yeah, like
gotcha.
like
you
an
gotta
air
be
vent.
out by yourself.
Like an air vent.
You
put a through hole through his head.
Haven't tried that one.
You know,
I haven't either.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I hear it works wonders.
That's
357 between the eyes. You vent them out. They
send
go
them
down,
back
eat,
down.
and
All right.
That's
now
one way to do it.
Snapper.
Let me know how that goes.
That's
I'm
one
not
way
going
to do
it. I got a pretty good
I
record.
was wondering where you're going with that. I was like,
definitely
isn't there a
one
vent
way to
line
take
for
care of it.
I
40
guarantee
feet?
you there's people
Yeah.
watching that have done the
The
vent.
45 vent.
Yes.
The
Dirty Harry.
But anyhow, to kind of follow.
didn't mean to
No, you're
interrupt you,
good.
but
To
you
kind of
guys
follow
sound like-
suit with where you were going with it, we literally picked a bumper, dropped the bait down, caught like a 50-pounder. You know, got him up, dropped back down, caught like a 150-pounder. Dropped back down. I mean, literally, right on the same spot.
All different fish, of course.
400-pounder. Boom, 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 boom. Now, I'm using an area that is known for having a lot of Goliaths just literally sitting there. I mean, the big boy that we pulled up, or girl, I don't know, would have like oysters and barnacles on. They don't move.
Nice.
You know what I mean?
True.
But for that instance, and then like when we were fishing offshore last summer, we were catching. We started getting smoked. We lost a lot of snapper rigs. We were getting, little yellowtail snapper jigs and stuff like that. We were losing them because we'd get the yellowtails up, catch a few, and then boom, they disappear. And so finally we got fed up. I said, dude, I'm done with this. And my cousin is an old commercial fisherman. So I got the anchor line out, and I had some 600-pound leader, and we had a hook and everything. So I said, we're bringing one of these things up. So I threw the anchor line down, and we hand lined one up. Dude, that joker had at least 6 or 8 hooks.
Every time.
And it was our stuff.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't, like
snapper and grouper rigs and stuff.
Yeah, he had all of our rigs in his mouth. So that one fish was doing all the damage in that spot.
Yeah.
And we caught him. We brought him up, let him back down. He took off, and we didn't get bit off by any more groupers, but we also didn't catch any more snappers. So, I don't know what the outcome of that was, but I do know that they will sit there and just wreck your stuff over and over and over. So they are
that little hook.
Depending on how you look at it, they're a problem. If you're a Goliath grouper fisherman, you're in luck.
Now my clients were convinced they were going to get him up on the 7-foot medium rod with the 15 braid.
And you were just like, you want the cushion?
I'm like, I mean, all right, that's 45 minutes. You can sit on him. I mean, one guy's like, what should I do? I said, I don't know, open the bail.
Hang on.
See if he spits him out.
Hang on.
There's nothing you can do.
There's nothing you can do. Well, you know what I thought when you talk about bay fishing, what are your normal rigs and gear look like when you go to do that? I mean, are you changing gears? Are you bringing different rods, reels?
Water clarity matters a lot.
It does. It does. So I'll give you an idea. And for me, let's just take a 2-person trip. I'm taking out 2 clients. So generally what I'll do is tackle that I'll bring. So I'll bring 2 of my regular inshore spinning setups. 10-pound braid, 3000 series reel,
Yeah.
7'6", that whole rig. And normally that'll be with 25 or 30-pound leader, right? Then I've got 7-foot, 20-pound class stuff, spinning gear. 6,000 bait runners, 20-pound braid, and I'll go to like a 30 or 40-pound leader on that. And for me, where I'm fishing, because clarity's not as important, that's like my big mangrove snapper rods, groupers, stuff like that, the shallow water stuff. And then I've got my 8-foot tarpon setups, which is, your 50, 60-pound main line, 8,000 series spinning rod with an 8-foot, medium, spinning setup. And so when I go bait fishing, a lot of times we'll set up and do some light tackle stuff on the surface, put a couple big rods out, or if we're targeting something specifically, maybe I'll bring my big open face, grouper rods, and we'll put a couple big baits out like that. But that's the one thing that I've noticed when you start bait fishing is you sort of need, quite a few different setups depending on what you're fishing for and sort of where you're fishing. And so I've noticed, like for me, in the morning, man, I've got a bunch of different stuff,
But you're really talking about 3 separate styles of combos. There might be pairs of them, but so and the reason I ask that is because in the shop, I know the question comes up a lot. Well, I need this for this, I need this for that, and we stress a lot that most of us are running out there, and we're really not taking different gear. We might rig it a little differently, but we're using our snook red rods, we're using our tarpon rods, and just rigging them up differently. Because I would venture to guess that you're not in the minority. I'm sure a lot of people doing it for a living are going out there with the gear, the spinning gear they're using all the time. We're not changing over to conventional just because we're going to target fish a little bit differently. So I want to make sure to get that clear. Because I think that a lot of people are a little confused, or maybe just aren't clear that same stuff works.
Yeah, definitely the spinning tackle stuff, I'd say is pretty even across the board. Like you said, you got your light, your medium, and your heavy. If you've got one setup of each of that, you should be in good shape. The X factor is your big open face, bottom group, traditional style, bottom digging, grouper rods. But outside of that, yeah, you're right. And then, we've got some stuff here on the table. We talked about bay fishing and a little bit about deep water fishing. And for the guys that just like getting out, cruising around, getting a little AC and sort of, not really wanting to post up and really get hardcore into fishing, trolling is a good technique that works not only inside Tampa Bay, but, out on the beaches. You get on some rock piles and you get on some ledges, and they'll work just as well. And, that's when I look at using those big, grouper rods, or, something with a roller guide on the top or something like that. And troll.
I still use my tarpon gear.
Do you troll with your spinning gear?
Yeah.
I just like it.
Yeah.
I do like, one of the things that I do like with the trolling is I do like using a more of a broomstick style rod.
Yeah.
And mainly because my tarpon rods, I've got a pretty flexible tip.
I know.
And you look back there and you're trolling, and your rod's like,
Yeah.
halfway doubled over sometimes. Trolling speeds, that's one that always comes up. I've done some grouper trolling seminars, and people always ask me, okay, I got this plug, a stretch 25 or a 30-foot plug, what speed should I troll?
Yeah.
And I always sort of bounce around from that like 3 to 5, mile per hour, spot. It's going to depend on if you're going into the current, if you're going away from the current, if you're crossing the current, and the wave activity, how rough it is, and then how deep it is.
The line.
If you're running, in 25, 30 feet of water, you're going to want to move that lure. You're not going to want to drag it because it's going to dive, and you're going to get hung. So, and the other thing is
you see me dragging one of these behind my boat,
been a tough day.
don't check me out, because somebody else is in my boat.
I tell you what, there's guys that have spent a lot of time trolling.
It's productive. It is productive. And
you can catch some fish.
I'd rather help you roof your house than
Vance Tice is a very well-known and respected grouper trolling guy inside Tampa Bay, and he's a really good resource over at Southeastern to ask about some trolling stuff. I never get into the planers. I'm not that hard into it. If a deep dive lip plug doesn't do it for me, I'm out. You know,
Me too.
I don't get all into the downriggers and
I fold them.
all that kind of jazz. But just a regular, 25 to 30-foot lip diving plug. Colors, my favorites are pink and blue.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two colors that I like. The greens and the chartreuses and the yellows will work just as well. James actually hooked me up with a couple of these similar to this, of the mackerel style, for kingfishing last year, and we were catching grouper, kingfish, all kinds of stuff on the beach with those trolling plugs. And what I like to do with those is, if you're an offshore or nearshore guy, and let's say you've got 3 or 4 different rock piles or marks that you're going to fish that day, I like trolling from spot to spot. Like if I've got another spot that's, say, a half mile or quarter mile or a mile away, we'll just troll over there. And a lot of times you can pick up, kingfish and
the bycatch,
everything on the way. There's been times where, this was way back in the day, where we'd find like grouper spots by just trolling over a hard bottom. And you go, man, we got a grouper. Let's spin around, mark it, and you catch a few grouper on a spot that you didn't necessarily know was there. So trolling's a good way to cover ground,
especially near shore. Because when you look at all these nearshore things and bay things are all public numbers. There's no secrets to it. There's probably preferred exact coordinates on an area, but there's a lot of exploring. So if you're new to it, or you've never, I'm going to go check out this particular reef. You're going to see that it's not a spot. It's the coordinates are going to bring you to the center. But that doesn't mean it's the most productive area. There could be hundreds of yards of fishable bottom around there. So I usually will tell people, and I do it myself, is as you're making your way out there, get to the spot, put a couple of these out, and go around and just read your machine. Helps if you got a second person to watch the rods, but read your machine, and as you're going past, man overboard, or waypoint, whatever it is, to mark those areas, and then come back and hit them. But at least you're still fishing the whole time you're doing it, because it could take you an hour if you've never been to a location. Just to kind of get a good feel for the bottom. But,
and I tell people that as well, like especially like bottom fishing and doing that type of stuff, it changes every year. Unlike our inshore stuff, where, like, let's say you got a mangrove shoreline, it may get a little bit deeper from that tide cycle through that year. That sandbar may close in just a little bit, or
grass grows,
whatever, grass and sand dies, whatever. When you start bottom fishing and you're looking at growth and you're looking at outcroppings on reefs and stuff like that, one little rockhead that 3 years ago could be a giant mass now that's got a bunch of snapper or groupers on it. And so I always like going back to stuff that we may have prospected and been like, oh, there's a mark there, we didn't catch anything. I always like going back there the next year, like a year or two later, and say, oh, let's go check that again, because a lot of times that whole situation changes with growth and fish moving in and out and stuff like that. So that's the cool thing about bottom fishing is, a lot of people got a lot of different numbers, and you sort of hit them all. Everybody knows, I'm going to go to these are my good ones. But if you think outside the box a little bit, troll around to some of the stuff that you may have that you haven't hit in a while, you may find a little gem out there that has sort of been working on itself. I know there's a wreck inside the bay that you and I like to fish. We did some mackerel fishing on it in the springtime. And over the last 3 to 4 years, that's become a pretty good bottom fishing spot. And it used to just be, surface fish, mackerels, and you could catch some ladyfish and just some weird stuff out there. But now that I think that wreck is starting to get some growth on it, and it's holding more fish. So something to kind of think about.
When you guys are bay fishing, thinking about these reefs, racks, whatever it is inside the bay, you said water clarity, like touch on that a little bit.
Well, one of the spots that I snapper fish is about 12 foot. So water clarity there makes a difference. Another spot I snapper fish is about 7 foot. It makes a difference on that. If we're having storms and some wind and that kind of thing, and the water's turned up, you can get away with a 30-pound leader.
Gotcha.
If the water's clear, if we've had no rain and nothing's turned up, or it's just nothing don't have no grass floating and none of the micros down there, you need a lighter leader and a
Mhm.
smaller hook, just
Mhm.
because snapper, as you know, anybody that fishes them knows they got good eyes.
Yeah.
And they'll run up to it or swim up to a bait and turn just as fast as they got there if they sense something wrong, and they can see but if the water's a little dirty, you can get away with it. That's what I was talking about.
So it doesn't really worry you so much as they're there or not, or the bite will be there or not. It's more how you're going to
yeah,
present.
yes,
Mm,
absolutely.
Gotcha. All right. I was just
Sometimes
wondering.
you have to hide
yeah.
your. I've found snapper, and I know y'all have too. You have to almost hide your hook
Yeah.
in the bait to get them to eat.
Yeah.
You know, downsize your leader and hide the hook, and all of a sudden they're eating now.
And the size of the bait sometimes I notice. I mean, because a lot of the times I'm using cut bait for snapper, unless we can get a lot of the small,
My favorite bait, that
micro,
small.
greenback. That's
Yeah.
the money right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, I
But
love that stuff.
we'll cut greenbacks or thread fins into small pieces and free line those back. And I've noticed that some days, I mean, you can put a 1-inch piece back there and they gobble it down. And some days, like you said, you're down to a number 1 hook, and you can't even. You're literally threading it in there, and you're like, all right, that one's
Mhm.
good to drift it back, and it makes all the difference
And
in
they
the
don't even
world.
have to be
Wait, let me
alive.
see that one again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know.
But I'm like you. I love those baits.
Yeah.
But you don't love them on the day you got a guy that says, "Man, are we gonna catch any big snook
Mhm.
today?
Yeah,
Let's go big
yeah.
snook fishing."
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go tarpon fishing.
Yeah, we got an inch and a half bait.
For-
It's not gonna happen.
For instance, Tuesday, this was my first time running out there and doing that near shore thing. I baited up at the Skyway. I was picking up over there and grabbed my guy. Said, "Are you ready to go?" Made a stop to a place that I always have been able to get when snapper are here, get those small baits. And I pulled up to it and I was like, "Man, those look small." And all I had. This is gonna go. I tell him he's with me on the boat. I was like, "This is gonna go one of two ways. We're either gonna be loaded with bait, or I'm gonna have a hell of a."
Or I'm bringing this back to
even
Mr.
if
Lee.
I have done this. Even if you gill a bunch of those little ones,
No,
take that net. Don't even worry with it. Just drag it with you to the fishing spot. Hang it
shake
over
it
the
out.
boat. Just start raking it over the side of the boat. Now y'all might not because y'all got cleaner boats, but I just take that net and just let the side of the boat just
Do the work.
grind
and for a
it
week
off.
later, he can just rub the rub
No,
rail
I clean it when I
and
get.
chum.
I clean it when I clean it when I get home. But I'm not the guy that puts the towel out and says, wipe your feet before you get in.
Yeah.
And I'm not knocking that.
Me
If-
neither.
If y'all are that guy, then
I'm not.
happy. But I'm not that guy, so I don't care if I get blood in the boat or
Yeah.
fish scales in the boat and all that kind
I
of
think
stuff.
we got James back on here.
I'm back on.
Oh, you're going
While it's
going
happening.
dead.
Oh,
Let me get your
shoot.
batteries.
We're gonna get some batteries. Man, what a night.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a blood
I'll
on
worry
the
about-
battlefield.
Yeah, I'll worry about cleaning the
Yeah.
boat later. But so I'll make a
Blood
mess with
spilled's a good
that,
thing.
And then you just kind of take the net like a towel and throw it and get a fresh batch of those babies to just grind them off. And next thing you know, you look down there and you've got a wad of snapper.
Just throw that one on. So what size snapper are you are we talking about here? Like, are we talking like these 4 and 5 pound
No.
snappers? Or are we talking
I'm
like
not
like
catching
14-inch, 15-inch,
them. Yes. Yes.
size
That's-
snappers?
I was talking 4 or 5 pound this week.
No, I'm.
I mean, it's not always like that, but usually, this time I will kind of wait for that full moon
Yeah.
to get here and pass, and then I start checking. I ask you guys. I'm always trying to learn from you guys about this bay fishing because I've always been way in the bay, to catch snapper, or way
Off.
out in the cleaner water.
Yeah.
Not way off. I mean, within, I would say, a couple miles usually
Right.
of shore, but in good clean water where, you're using 15, 20 pound leader
Right.
max. Yeah, I feel like you get a better size fish, but there's a few more obstacles there. But, I haven't done a lot of that bay fishing on those reefs inside the bay.
What depth are you fishing when you go 3 miles offshore? What are you looking at?
I don't know, 25 to 35 feet generally.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the X factor to all that is our shipping channel is 43 feet.
Yeah.
That's the X factor. Plus you add flow.
Mhm.
So the current flow, you get tidal, you get current out in the Gulf.
Yeah.
We get tides. So
Yeah.
the tide moves in and tide moves out. And I think the nutrients inside the bay, especially hugged up with the shipping channels, I think is just, the mecca for shallow water inshore snapper fishing.
Yeah.
If we didn't have that shipping channel, you wouldn't see these big grouper I don't think not in the quantities that we see them. You know, I think the shipping channel is our X factor. Part of the reason, I mean, and I always say it, if you take Tampa Bay and you compare it to Charlotte Harbor, okay, you know, there are snapper spots in Charlotte Harbor, and there's groupers. There's not a lot though.
Yeah,
it's
there
mainly in the two couple holes where there's some wrecks and reefs out in the middle of the harbor. I mean, really, you can catch these types of fish from the Skyway Bridge all the way to the Port Tampa. I mean, they exist. Port Tampa, you know, and I'm not going to give away a whole bunch, but I like fishing up there. I mean, there's some 4 and 5 pound mangrove snappers that are in the port, and it's all because of that shipping channel. You know, it's all because of that depth. It's all because of those ledges and all that type of stuff. So it's the same philosophy. It's just you got to find those areas where, you know, whether it's teasing the channel or, you know, when they dredge that channel. I was just talking to Jason about it the other days. You know, there's ledges and, you know, fallouts where they dredge a channel and it goes from 18 feet to 40 feet. That's not just a straight wall like they poured concrete.
No.
You know, that's got chiseled in and, you know, halfway down that caved in and there's a cavity in there. And so, you know, on the bottom machine, you might not read it like that. You know, the guys that are, you know, I always say that there was a really good offshore guy that was like the man at reading the machine, and he came inside the bay and started really dialing it in. And
knock him out.
He'd own it.
He'd own it because that's part of the magic is looking at your machine and understanding what's below you and where to fish it and how to fish it on the tide, you know. And but there's a lot of good spots out there. And last year we were catching snappers, you know, 4 to 5 pounds in Tampa Bay inside the bridge on a consistent basis. Now they weren't all that big, but there's you know, you let that bait. It's that guy that falls asleep and never closes his bail and just lets it keep drifting back when you're on a snapper bite. He's the guy that gets the 4 and 5 pounder.
Sure.
The guy that's way back there, just like
Makes
Yellowtail.
it through all the crazy
if it can
fish
get
going
through.
crazy. Yeah, if it can get through.
Lets it get through all the little juvenile snappers and.
Shoot, that's what trouble we were having is we were putting these baits out and they couldn't make it past the mackerel. You know, they're just getting.
I'll tell you something. Too, and you may want to try this offshore. If you know there's some big mangrove snappers around, and you and I did a little bit of this offshore, pinfish.
Pinfish, yeah.
A large mangrove snapper will gladly choke down a pinfish.
Yeah.
And
you know, and they're perfect. This time of year. You know, they're the. You don't want a pinfish like we'd go snook or tarpon fishing for. You want, you know, a 2.5 inch pinfish.
Now's the time to catch a bunch of those.
And the nice thing about the pinfish is they go straight down. You let them go most of the time.
They beat
with the exception with the exception of current, they're gonna go to the bottom. You know, and I've found that when I'm getting bit by a lot of juveniles, I'll go ahead and try to find a small pinfish and.
You definitely
we did it offshore. Remember, I caught a big mango offshore with you that day on
like a
toad. It was a toad, and that thing ate like a pinfish, probably 3 or 4 inches. You know, so it's just a. Oh, Bobby Grace told me that. That's who told me that. So I've kept that one in my back pocket, and it does work.
It's out now.
Yeah, I mean it ain't no big deal, but anyhow, well, that's sort of where we're going with the show, guys. Like I said, we're talking some bay fishing. If anybody's got anything, I know our show's a little funky tonight. Like I said, if you're just getting in, we're broadcasting from our Tampa Fishing Outfitters page, the store page. We got to do a little maintenance on our fishing report page, but glad you guys found us. If you feel obligated, you can like and share the video for us. That would be very much appreciated. And like I said, if you got any other questions, let us know. We're here for you guys, and we'll do what we can to get any questions answered.
With the trivia.
The trivia.
That one stumped both of us, and you know, in the spirit of bay fishing, we're going to give away a couple trolling plugs, a red and white head, and a green mackerel tiger style trolling plug. But that trivia question stumped both of us. Didn't it?
It got me. I don't even know if we got the answer. We didn't get the answer.
We were given.
We were given an answer. But
yeah.
So let it rip, Rick. Rick's proud of this.
What's the farthest state north that a redfish has been caught?
So what state heading north from Florida is the furthest north that somebody has caught a redfish.
Yes, correct.
What state? So
And they may have caught it on a diving plug up there. Who knows?
They could have.
they could have been.
Because it wasn't Georgia.
It wasn't Georgia. Wasn't Georgia. So if y'all think you can, the Googlers are going right now.
At it. I know
Yep.
Ty Kobe is
The Googlers.
during slack tide.
Let's talk a little bit about, and it's
Eat. Troll.
troll,
So that's something.
swim.
Yeah, swim. No, but seriously, like on when I'm going through a charter plan with somebody, and it's a longer day during the summer, say it's going to be 6 hours or so, I'll usually bring up the idea of throwing in an hour of trolling. I don't do a lot of it.
Mhm.
You know, I've got some productive places. For me, it's more of a wintertime thing. But this time of year, it is nice. You know, you start to get in that slack tide period. This time of year, we tend to have a period of the day where there's no wind. It's usually when the sun's the highest. You know, so I can get people under the shade, get a cold drink, let them eat a sandwich. Same for me, recharge, and just throw a couple lines out and just bump along the edge of the shipping channel. You know, it's productive. Like, there's fish hitting the boat. They're not always keepers. But, you know, at least we're still fishing during that time, and it gives everybody a chance to kind of recharge the batteries. So, for me, what do I do during a slack tide? That'd be probably my go-to. At least we're still fishing, and everyone can kind of hang out.
And if you got something, Rick, you can chime in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, bikini up. Yeah, it's like Rick's like, I try to promote eating. What do you guys got for me? What's in the cooler?
Yeah. We're going to go check this spot 30 minutes away, get the AC going.
I tell you, you know, and it transitions through the winter period of tides, but I mean the summer period of tides. But the one cool thing about bay fishing is the tide transition is nowhere near as long as inshore. You know, if you're fishing an area and the tide, you know, comes to a high and gets ready to go out, it transitions a lot quicker when you're bay fishing than it does if you're sitting in Cockroach Bay going, oh, it stopped, you know, and we're going to be an hour before it moves again. You know, right. That's a lot more torturous than the bay thing. And so for me, what I like to do, and because you're in the bay, you're a little bit more accessible to other spots. So like if I'm fishing the bay, it's nothing for me to run to St. Pete or to run out closer to the bridge or to run back towards Apollo Beach. And so you can chase the tide, you know. And so like a lot of my bay trips, people are like, what are we gonna do today? And a lot of times I look at my machine, I look at the tide, and I'm going, well, we're gonna go south and we're gonna fish our way north.
Yeah.
And whatever tide we started catching fish on north or south rather, we're gonna try to match that in the north. So if it was halfway through the tide, if I start in the morning and I'm at the top of an incoming tide, let's say, and I run south and that tide turns and starts going out, and the first half of that tide is miserable, but as halfway through that tide, if it starts turning on, I'll fish that tide till it almost ends.
Yeah.
And then I'll run 30 minutes north and fish the same exact period of that tide in a different area, and a lot of times it's productive.
Yep.
And so now vice versa, if the tide's trickling in still or whatever, I'll run north, fish that, and then flip back over.
I learned that, and I'm sure you did too, before ever guiding was ever even on the table. It's being a guy who fishes, you know, before guiding, it's Saturday, I'm fishing. Didn't matter if it was 20 knots, didn't matter if it was raining, didn't matter if there was a crappy tide, we were fishing. So you kind of, over time, just figure out,
you learn,
make the best of it and plan accordingly. But like you said, chasing the tide, that was always the first thought, you know. My routine used to be, you know, on an incoming tide, start at Joe's and chase it all the way back to Cockroach, you know, the whole time. Been doing that for many years. But
Yep. But to answer your question, or to kind of go with it, I mean, I try to avoid it, you know, or when you get those quarter moon tides that even during the tide cycle doesn't really move, you know, those are good mackerel days, and believe it or not, bay fishing, those are good snapper days.
Yeah.
Because what ends up happening, and there's a lot of times where clients will actually kind of question it, because I'm like, we got to get to this spot and we got to get there at the top of the tide before it really starts moving one way or the other.
Sure.
because I want my chum to go straight down, and I want my baits to go straight down.
You're right.
And
another thing about that that's good is you don't have to stack your line up with a bunch of weight because
looks more natural. You can lighten up everything. You can feel the bites better. You can hit that spot, and particularly with snapper, particularly inside the bay, you can get the fish up. Not when it's blowing current. If it's ripping, those fish are going to be 20 yards behind you. You never see them.
Yeah.
Now you can catch them, but when you hit the peaks of those tides, the highs and the lows, you can actually, if you get on the spot, you can raise those fish up and put them under your boat or right next to your boat. As the tide, you know this, as the tide starts ripping one way or the other, you'll start to see them fish sort of disappear. So my point to it is I don't think that the slack tide is as critical as it is in the spring and our inshore stuff as it is with the bay.
Right, because you're fishing different.
It's just a different, sort of philosophy.
Yeah.
So and to add to that, I sort of like a slack tide in the bay for certain things that I'm going to do, but I'll cater the trip around that. Spanish mackerel are like iffy. If they're around,
sometimes the slack tide you can.
well, that's what I'm saying. If they're around, because they're the double check. I'm pretty sure they're still considered a pelagic, and so they're going to move. They never stop. They're not like a Immaculatus, the old Immaculatus, but yeah, like unlike redfish, snook, and trout, and we talked about this in recent episodes about how they'll just lay around.
Yeah.
Spanish mackerel
They
don't
never
just
stop moving.
lay around; they're just constantly swimming. And so some of these rock piles and some of these wrecks that you get on, the current will help you because the mackerel are just diving around, and when you start chumming them, oh man, you just made the party.
Yeah.
I mean, it's game on, and so you got more options slack tiding it in the bay than you do definitely in the backcountry.
Yeah.
So, but swimming, making a run. A lot of my tarpon trips, we'll start off in the morning. We'll go to a tarpon. We'll go to a tarpon area. We may fish three or four different spots in that area, but then generally, depending on how it went, I'll make a substantial run to finish up. Part of that too is this time of year it's hot. You sit around, you fish an area for 2 or 3 hours, you're getting hot.
Yeah.
And so that
You've gotta
20 to 30 minute
Yeah.
run sort of like you said, it sort of recharges the batteries. I always tell guys, all right, y'all ready to kick the AC on? And it's normally like,
that's it.
yeah, let's go for a ride. And so we'll make a run across the bay and kind of cool everybody off, and it re-energizes you for that next
Yeah.
sit and
45 minutes.
tarpon
an hour
fish.
doing it.
So that's what I like to do. Be careful swimming in some of these areas, man. There's some.
Yeah.
I tell you what, there's some big sharks around, especially if you're tarpon fishing. I saw a guy at Bean Point one day just dive right off the side of his boat and go swimming.
Yeah.
And I mean, granted, odds are
Yeah.
ain't nothing gonna happen, but
Too many years fishing for me. I'm too.
I,
chicken.
Especially if you're the guy in like the tarpon shirt that's got the scales on it, and the
Dorado,
tarpon, and the tarpon
Yeah.
board shorts.
Yep.
Might not want to be backstroking it through the pads.
Oh man.
But anyhow, man, it's all good stuff. So, y'all got anything, man? Come on, fire us up something. I know there's some people watching.
You know what everyone's always interested in? Bait.
What's that?
You doing bait deep water? You doing bait flats? What do you?
Bait. We always talk about tarpon fishing, and because it's probably the most diverse fish as far as bait goes. What you got to have, Rick just pulled the plug on us, guys. He's out. He's out. You can share with James. You can get in there with James.
Get this one. We'll stay home for a little bit.
So bait for tarpon. I got a tarpon trip in the morning.
Yeah.
And I've got dead bait in the cooler.
Mhm.
I'm gonna catch some live bait in the morning. Ladyfish, mullet. Pinfish. You need it all.
gamut.
The whole gamut when I go tarpon fishing, because you never know that day. You read the fish and you try to figure out that day, that period, what you're doing, what they want to eat. And we're gonna be bikini fishing tomorrow.
Yeah.
so we're gonna bring them right to the boat. But normally bait fishing, I'm not as concerned with live bait. I want it. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's a bonus to have some, but you find that a lot of the times the cut or something dead generally is a little bit better.
Yeah.
Live bait will work. I mean, especially if you're mackerel fishing, and I think what it boils down to is like Spanish mackerel, for instance, you can catch them on shrimp, you can catch them on cut thread fins or cut greenbacks, you can catch them on plugs, you can catch them on live bait. It's kind of how you want to do it and what you're set up for. So if you're a live bait guy, there's nothing cooler than getting on a bunch of mackerel and firing them up and having them skyrocket and letting them eat. If you're cut baiting them, it's not quite as entertaining, to fish them.
But when you're snapper fishing, you bring them up and you start bringing that visual aspect in. You can really only do that with dead bait. I don't really get that going with a live bait.
I have got them going with live bait, but not big baits.
Yeah,
when I've got the tiny stuff, a lot of times, just like you're snook fishing.
Upper Bay.
Rails of them.
Yeah, further north you go and you start putting that little bait in, it looks like snook.
It'll come up and it'll, be flipping on the surface. The dead ones are just kind of falling down. Looks like snow, and those snappers will come right up, man. But funny enough, too, is I've had snappers where you're live bait chumming them, but they won't eat a live bait. You take the head and the tail and pinch it off one of those little baits and just let it float back, and I get eaten. I don't know if that's just coincidence or what, but I have noticed that a few times when we've got a lot of live bait, but I'll actually switch over to the cut bait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, so I haven't caught bait in the same place probably in 2 or 3 weeks. Every day it's something new for me to get bait because I'm in a different area. So just curious.
I've been pretty consistent where I've been catching bait. The problem is the bait hasn't been as consistent as I've been going there.
Yeah, I hear you. That's what's tough. Like
I'm getting it and I'm doing fine. I'm getting enough bait to run my trips, but it's definitely getting a little more difficult. The deep water stuff is. I think this bait spawned on this last moon. It fell off for a couple days. It was basically gone. It moved back a couple days ago, and we've been getting it pretty good. Now, will that disappear? Who knows? There's a trending pattern where historically every year a lot of bait will move north, and I'm about to that point where I'm going to start inching my way north for bait. Sounds crazy, but that's sort of the pattern that I've seen over the years. So,
well, we're about at the end. We got that. Mickey looks like Mickey dropped the question: is the red tide affecting you guys? I mean, it's not affecting me. It's only affecting it's the first question. It's generally a question that comes up in the conversation when we're booking a trip.
That's it.
No red tide. Yeah.
Is that where? Maine. That's our fish.
Maine was the furthest north redfish.
So Maine.
Nobody got it, but no.
You can catch redfish. So IFA. Maine.
Look for that, Maine.
Maine. Let's bump it up a notch, baby. Maine. Let's see who's got the redfish dialed in Maine. While you're at it, go blue crabbing and bluefin tuna.
There you go.
That's
cool.
That's pretty crazy.
But yeah, no, I'm not really seeing any signs of that in the bay or even now. That doesn't mean it can't change. I mean, it's a pretty serious. It's a very serious issue down there.
It is. It's a super serious issue, and there's been a lot of talk on social media about it. A lot of different opinions, a lot of right answers, a lot of wrong answers. It just depends on, we are sort of biased on some level, and as much as I don't want to be, it's not affecting us in Tampa Bay right now. So, for me to say, those guys are blown out of proportion or whatever, you can't really say that because it's not affecting us.
They know how to make it work down there. They're still on fish. They're still catching fish. They just
right.
Got to work around it. I guess.
Right. And there's a fine line between promoting it and hurting, what's not affected. And I don't want to go into all that, but what I will say is I got a lot of respect for the guys down south. I have no negative opinions for what's been said or what's been posted. I think is all in good, gesture to try to get the problem resolved.
Yeah.
So getting it out there is not a bad thing. But in Tampa Bay, we are not seeing any red tide. It's not affected my fishing yet. I hope it doesn't. and I pray that the guys down south get some reprieve and that
Sure.
they get their solution, soon.
Absolutely.
So,
Me too.
with that being said, guys, one quick question from Kenny asked, how do you sit in a spot? How long do you sit in a spot till you go to move? Man, it all depends on what I'm fishing for.
Yeah.
Tarpon's going to be longer than anything, and snappers, tarpon snappers going to be longer than anything.
Yep.
Redfish, snook, and trout, 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah. I usually say this: if your gut tells you to move, go with your gut. If you're not feeling it, you don't think it's going to happen, that sets in, because confidence plays a big factor too.
100%.
You're not confident. You've lost that. Move on.
Game over. Well, guys, we're about to run out of time here. We appreciate you joining us. Like I said, sorry for the little technical issue per se. We're going to be back on our TFO live fishing report page next week. And until then, tight lines. And we appreciate your time. We'll see you next week, guys.